Okay, welcome everybody to Outside the Box. This is an occasional, random, very casual sort of chat that we have. We started this way back in COVID times as a way of sort of communicating with people outside of our houses, and we've just sort of carried it on from time to time, just talking to people around the world, really, just about everything, encompassing the whole world of high strangeness, from ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, just anything really that's worthy of our discussion, really. So yeah, we just want to talk about things to the people that know the things. And yeah, tonight's guest, we've got Te Oka Toia. Welcome.
Good everybody. Yeah, hello. My name is Te Oka Toia. I have spent a number of years as a ghost tour guide. But more than anything, I think I just love history. I'm big on Maori history. Lots of information within the Maori realm, including spirits and stuff of that sort. We well, myself, like I was raised with my grandmother in a largely Maori household. So the school I attended was the first Maori language school in New Zealand, Whānau Waititi Marae. So I've grown up in a Maori immersed world, so like total immersion of Maori culture, the language, and things like that. And then, when I was older, I worked for Auckland Ghost Tours originally, for the old boss. Shout out Nick McNulty, he was really cool. The old owner of Auckland Ghost Tours hired me, when I was younger. And then I ended up purchasing the business of them and running that for 12 years before COVID. Um, yeah, a little bit about myself.
So tell me a little bit about your childhood, though. I mean, this is not going to be some sort of psychotherapy type session. I just want to know about growing up, and how you developed this interest. And I mean, was it just through stories through your family and the various generations? How did you get into all this?
I am an avid reader. So when I was younger, there was a lot of uh, Māori sort of school journal books that had Māori legends or tales, sort of more written towards a younger audience. But those were the sort of books that I was exposed to when I was younger. At school, we didn't learn to speak English until what was back then around like Form 4, Form 5, so 15, 16, around that age. I don't know what it is in years now. But when I started to learn English, I started reading more variety of books. I grew up with my grandmother, so I kind of have like old lady. I hung out with a lot of old people who would talk about this sort of stuff, and they're the ones who were more superstitious or talked about things like marketu or curses or ghost stories and things like that. I think also it's just fun. It's just something that every culture kind of has some stories about that. And yeah, when I was running the tours, I decided to sort of change up the formula. Where prior to that, it was more of um, kind of like a murder tour or a death tour. There was lots of stories about death. I still tell some of those stories, but I've added a lot of multicultural stories to for an indigenous context of the spiritual world and things like that. But stories, man, I love to read. I still read stories. Love reading horrors when I was younger, sci-fi, things like that. So yeah, just a bit of
Yeah.
a book nerd.
Oh yeah, same. Yeah, and it's interesting. You grew up with your grandmother too. I did the same.
Yeah,
So she taught me a
yeah,
lot. And even
yeah,
though she
yeah,
she encouraged my interests, and even though she thought I was a bit weird, she still encouraged
yeah.
them. And
That's
she told me
cool.
just to, if I was interested in something, just to read about it and learn it and
Mm.
go wherever it takes me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, yeah. I mean, the last time I saw you, Te Oka, was at the Spirit Talk event. That was
That was a
back
really
in
fun event.
when was that? That was back in April. April.
Yep. Yep. That was
Doesn't
fun.
seem that long
I
ago.
had a good night. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it was a fantastic talk. It was incredible. I was quite mesmerized, as I know a lot of the people that were there, and I had a bit of good feedback afterwards as well.
No,
Um,
thank you.
it was just really interesting. It was stuff that you don't hear very often. Maybe it's a little bit too dark for some ears, but the stories like that, they're a little bit sort of hidden away. They don't get discussed much, and I just thought it was amazing just to hear those stories and get them
Mm.
out there. And yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a hell of a lot. It was really good. So it just left me with lots of questions now. I've got heaps of questions
Yeah.
to ask you. So yeah. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, one thing. So what? But as a child, what was there a certain story? Like, was there a ghost story or a tale that you heard that you were fascinated by
Um,
that sort of sparked you a bit?
there's like so many to be honest. I'll share a couple of them, but so growing up within like a multi context, um, we tend to go to far more funerals than most people. So that's where these sorts of stories are getting told when you're staying at the marae with your cousins, like uncles, telling you ghost stories about the house at the back of the marae, the broken church at the back. I will tell some of these stories, but I'll break it down in a chronological order because I do like a good storytell. Um, but yeah, basically these are where you're picking up these influences. You're seeing far more dead bodies than most people would. And in multicultural, you do tell stories. We're an oratory culture, so these stories are kind of ways to process death and what's going on. And like it does make you be a little bit more desensitized to dead bodies and things like that. And so, as kids, you will tell stories like that. Um, Popular ghost stories on my marae. So, just to let you know where I'm from, I'm from Ngāpuhi and Tainui, so the Waikato region and Kaikohe in the northern region. I also whakapapa to Ngāti Paoa and Ngāti Pākau. Um, so Manarai Tahike is situated on just about 10 minutes drive outside of Kaikohe, but in Māori culture, it's situated on one of the pathways to leading a wide world, which is one of the stories I talked about, the Māori afterlife story at the spiritual.
Mhm.
Um, to break down an understanding of sort of that side of Māori culture, you can sort of look at it from three different perspectives. So there's the physical world, the spiritual world, and like the mental realm. So what you can think, and the Māori concepts for folklore, legend, mythology, things like that, and then the physical realm. So that's all like our environment, the trees, um, and how we take custodianship over the areas that we whakapapa to or dwell in. So in terms of the Māori folklore, legends, spiritual information, that's all kind of situated within probably two realms, like the spiritual realm, but also the mental realm as well. Um, Knowledge will be passed down traditionally by telling different stories. The story which is associated with my family directly is at the front of my marae Tākei, there is the front house and then a house at the back of the kitchen section. Um, and that is the house that my grandmother grew up in. The house at the back was my grandmother's father's. Um, it was a house, but also a business. They ran a kind of like what was it called, a funeral parlor there on the marae. So whānau could bring their bodies down to Tākei marae, where the bodies would get, you know, embalmed and stuff just off the marae premises. So my nana's told me stories about growing up in Tākei, having coffins measured up in her lounge and stuff like that. Some of the stories they told were about the where they would like drain the bodies. So they would tell us as kids that like you don't go behind that part of the house because that's where all the ghosts are from where they emptied the blood from all the bodies. And so when you're, passing down stories like this, and there's also a church that was a little bit run down and decrepit just from, not being maintained, where there are stories that the pews would shake in there at night. It had like a raggedy old door that it was hard to get into the church. The floor had holes in it. The windows were smashed. There was still the altar where you could go and speak at the front of the church. It's quite small, so probably about 2 meters wide and about 5 meters deep. The roof had holes in it, but it still had all the pews in it, the altar, and it just did give a creepy vibe. We'd hang out in there, kids. It still now is else. We still go into the church. In fact, it's a little bit more worn down than it was when I was growing up. But yeah, that's one of them. Another story. This isn't really a ghost story, but it's just a story that I like to keep alive, which is it's probably in itself gotten so much lore now that um it has created its own ghost, possibly, So, this is the story of Auntie Oogs. Auntie Oogs is one of our tupuna. She's on our marae at Tākei. Um, the image is quite striking. There's just something off about it, unsettling about it. And no matter how long you look at it, you can just tell that something is not quite all there. The photo is from a time ago when photography was just being developed and invented. So it's 1800s photos have been taken. They're still sepia tone, black and white, things like that. You also have to think about it in this context. We take for granted the power that a photograph holds. And so, in in terms of these sorts of older photos that we hang on our wall, back then it was a form of prestige or mana to have a picture of you taken because it's quite tapu to have the head of a person, you know what I mean?
Mm.
In a different context. So to actually possess an image of someone or to have their head was something quite unique in a Maori context, and people did want to have their photos taken, and have an image of their head. You also have to think about it now because we have every device has a phone on it, and people just are quite wasteful photos. You really need to think about what it was that you wanted to take a picture of, frame it right, lots of staging, and yeah, to have a picture back then would have been something that not many people would have. It could also be shown as a sign of prestige. At her funeral, she had never had a photo taken of her during her life. So, in order to have an image of her for her for her to papu for where the body was, they took a photo of her dead body inside the coffin and then drew eyes on it to make it look like she was awake and alive.
Mm.
But the longer that you look at the picture, there's just something quite unsettling. The rest of the face is just too slack and there's no life in it, you know what I mean? And then there's these artist rendering of eyes open, which have recently been touched up, but it's still kind of creepy. So basically they, penciled in some eyes over the top of her black and white image. to give her some eyes that were awake. And it's just a little bit unsettling. And it's a picture I like to draw the next generation to. I like to tell the kids about the story of Auntie Oogs, because for the rest of their stay, they cannot help but look at that picture and think of, the strange repercussions of having known that story now and what the picture was like beforehand.
Mm.
But yeah, but it's also just a little background into Māori's we'll carry on stories. We do understand our lineage far back and understand, have a good in-depth understanding of our family tree and where we're from. So stories like this, they're meant to be shared and passed on. A story dies if it doesn't get told. So
That's right. And that's what I appreciate about you, actually, is just that you're out there preserving these stories and just carrying them on into various different new generations. New people are hearing it, and I mean, I've learned a lot just by listening to you a few times, and it's great. I mean, right now, I think at this point, I might actually add a slight disclaimer that because this is a work in progress for me. This is something I'm learning. I'm learning all the time,
yeah.
and I don't claim to know everything about the whole Maori sort of lifestyle and culture and everything. So I'm learning from listening to people like yourself and reading. So please excuse me if I mispronounce something or sound a bit ignorant about something. I am a little bit naive on some parts, and I'm learning all the time. So yeah, I'm soaking it up like a sponge. Yeah, and so yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's a great learning process, and just through our research and just through going out there and meeting people, we've met a lot of people out there, and it's just fascinating to hear the stories. It's amazing. I mean, I did actually hear from one. There was one Maori elder that he was at a funeral. There was a cemetery. It was where was it? It was in the Waikato. There was a cemetery that's right up on the hill there, uh, right beside the Waikato River, and
Taupiri Manga.
that's the one. Yeah, and I drove past, and yeah, I didn't know. I thought this is an amazing place, and I wanted to take some photographs, but I was told straight away that I shouldn't be taking photographs because photographs cameras can steal the souls, and so yeah. I mean, is that you're saying about how a lot of them wanted to have photos taken?
Yeah, so in that context of like photography being an emerging technology, there was also considered kind of avant-garde and art spaces as well. So
Uh,
that's where it held sort of like a different form of prestige. Yeah, you're talking about um, something different, especially that particular cemetery is where the Maori kings have been buried. So Taupiri
yes, that's
Manga
the
is my manga as well. Um, and it's quite unique in itself because it's a cemetery manga. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's got lineage there and it's just photos of cemeteries or resting places. It's considered a wahi tapu or a sacred place. It's the same with when I'm on the tour at Summer Street Cemetery. It has a little bit of different rules there, but I still follow the same protocols that I would if entering one of our own tribal cemeteries. So Protocol has all its own steps for that as well. You may or may not know, like the water cleansing sort of ceremony stuff. There's always a bottle of water outside that's to clean spirits off you, but there's a lot of them like don't eat in the cemetery. Um, there's also other rules about not taking jewelry into the cemetery or tonga, because back in the old days, tonga would be taken to the cemetery to be gifted to people that were passed, So
Mm.
um, old Māori Urupa protocol from pre-European colonization. Um, we had different burial practices, different customs and traditions associated with death. Wahi tapu is one of those domains where, as a resting place for the dead, uh, specific protocols need to be followed. So it can either be for a funeral, being cutting it into the funeral, also calling the same sort of cutting it that they would do on a marae. They would call the body into the wāhi tapu with the mourning family or the whānau pani. And you take the body in, and when you leave, it's the same thing. Karakias are performed throughout the ceremony, so possibly before you enter. For me, on our cemetery tour, I always do a karakia before we enter. Um, a bit of a tau parapara at the end before leaving the cemetery. That's usually used in whai kōrero customs, like speech customs. Ka piti hono, tātai hono, ngā hunga ora ki te hunga ora. Ka piti hono, tātai hono, ngā hunga mate ki te hunga mate. So basically means it's an acknowledgement of letting the dead stay with the dead and the living to stay with the living. So, when we leave the cemetery, that the dead stay there with the rest of the dead and that the living leave with the living. So, and then at the end of the tour, to conclude it, we always do a karakia at the end and a water cleansing ceremony, sprinkling water on ourselves and on our guests. The same sort of protocol that you would do at a funeral or in a wāhi tapu in Māori culture. So, yeah, following all those same traditions and protocols. And I mean, no, I don't think I've had too many spiritual encounters or things like that. But I like to believe it's because I follow all these weird little traditions and rituals that have been passed down. And nothing does come home with me and stays there in the cemetery. So yeah, um, following these sorts of things is just, I guess, part of being raised in that Māori environment, and yeah, just keeping those traditions alive.
Yeah. And so, when did you start doing your tours? I mean, it's been going for a while now. When did you
So
start?
I'm 39 now. I started doing the ghost tours when I was 24. So it's a little while ago,
Yeah.
and it's quite a young age, really. Now that I look back, quite quite an ambitious thing to do for a 24-year-old. I have children on my own, and I just can't imagine them even taking care of a household, probably, let alone, trying to do something as crazy as that. And I think it was kind of ballsy for of a move. A lot of people are like, "What do you mean you're telling ghost stories?" And I'm like, it's exactly that. Like, yeah, I'm telling ghost stories and taking people around for walks around the city. Um, and I honestly didn't expect it to blow up as big as it did. Did it would get so popular?
Well, it's unique,
Um,
isn't it? It's nobody's
it's
doing it,
very
and I
unique.
mean,
Yeah,
since you started it, nobody has tried to copy it since.
yeah, yeah,
As far as regular ghost tours.
yeah. And I think what makes the Auckland Ghost Tours quite special is the Maori viewpoint, is sharing these sort of cultural stories. I think a lot as well. This is within Maori tourism as well. Um, uh, People, I mean, it's not really my bag, but just the whole sort of like song and dance tourism. I don't know about that, eh? And I might not also be very popular with most sort of yeah, Maori people in terms of that. Um, but I like to share stuff that is the stuff that doesn't get talked about or doesn't get shared with people. Um, you know, Māori history was brutal and ruthless and kind of arcane, and there was some cool. There's there's richness in these stories, you know.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with sharing the more bizarre and macabre stuff, I think. And yeah, I think that's what made it unique and different for, especially for a night out. It's quite a cool night out. Go out. You'll definitely look at Auckland City different afterwards. And it's good fun.
And that's the thing. It's all about history, and it's like history isn't all fluff. It's
Yeah.
all, there are dark sides, there are sides which might be considered a bit disturbing or different. Um, it's not all, happy daisies and fluffy clouds,
Yeah.
there are dark sides, and there was bloodshed and tragedy as well as the happy stuff. So it's history is history, whether you consider it good or bad, it's still history and it's part of this
Mm.
country. Um, so we need to learn it and share it, and it's you can't just dismiss it or hide it away. It
Mm.
needs to be shared. It needs to be brought out there so that people can learn, good or bad. It's people need to learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as well with sort of Māori recorded knowledge, a lot of it was stored in arts or, stories. I think Māori are natural born storytellers because that's how we share information. But also, as humans, we like stories. It's good for our, you know, primate brain to be social and hear stories and pass those sorts of, information that way.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think we're naturally good storytellers because that's the sort of way we pass on information about our culture. Every art form, I mean, there's also stuff on the Twitter as well, but like the carving traditions, weaving traditions, all of those are just legends and stories. Each pen is, a different legend associated with different gods or um, famous Māori warriors and things like that. Um, but yeah, I think in terms of from uh, you know an ancient perspective, it would be bizarre to see all these different forms of art. The carvings are quite strange and unique and look like aliens, and like
mm,
it's. I think yeah, a big part of modern culture having weird mythological things and
yeah.
god pantheons and stuff.
Well, I mean, a lot of that side is what's fascinated me since I was a child. The whole sort of Maori folklore and just everything. Like the Patu Parahi. That's something that I've always been quite fascinated. I've always been fascinated in while I don't publicly admit it, fairies and gnomes and elves and that kind of thing, and just forest people and forest dwellers and those sorts of beings that live in the forests and all that. I've always been quite fascinated by that, and I've travelled around the world and been to various places like Ireland and Scotland and all around the UK, and they have their own little fairy folk as well that go back thousands of years. Um, so Patu Parahi is just one that I'm fascinated in. What do you know about them?
So Patupaia here are a part of, yeah, sort of I think, Taniwha lineage of folk legends, known to be like the fairy folk of Māori, fair-skinned, red hair, um, and yeah, as you said earlier, dwellers in the forest,
Mm,
these the legends for the Patupaia here are said that they would come with the mist in the likeness of children, usually not really malevolent or anything like that, but with sort of a cheerful, playful attitude, probably entice children with games or lure men in, sensually, things like that. Uh, but yeah, they'd come in with the musts and kidnap children or, like steal men away. And um, there is a particular legend associated with Patupaia here as well. You know Hunua Falls? Have you
yeah,
been there?
yeah.
Have you done a video there? Done any
I
study
no,
there?
I haven't actually filmed it or anything. No, no.
Yeah.
I've
You
been
know the
there.
story of Hunua Falls though, eh?
Um, not as far as fairy folk. I do. It does sound vaguely familiar.
Okay, so
Hui.
the name of Hunua Falls is named off after the chief Hunua, who threw his daughter off that waterfall,
Ah, yes.
due to get up like a rivalry love story basically. And I mean, there's lots of likenesses to this particular story, but Hunua Falls is interesting for a few reasons. One, it is like the traditional story of Hunua Falls is that it is the story of a young, um, the daughter of a Maori chief, a young daughter of a Maori chief, falling in love with a young Patu Paerehe, like a forbidden type of love. On the edge of these tribal lands in Te Maki, it was said that their tribal lands used to border the forest to a Patupaerehe village. And over the years, the chief Hunua and the chief of the Patupaerehe would go to war with each other. This is near the Hunua Falls. Anyway, over the years, from all these battles and then coming together and vying for territory and fighting each other for land, their children would grow up on opposite sides of the battlefield. You know, uh, this is all they knew was this warring campaign. So they grew up on the opposite sides of the battlefield, slowly fell in love with each other as they grew up. The daughter of the chief was named Wairere, and Hui was the name of the Patupaerehe boy that she fell in love with. Now, Wairere approached her father Hunua to tell him that she was in love with Hui, and he basically forbade their love. And they kept seeing each other secretly. Then he tricked Wairere into revealing the location of their village. And so all of the story, by the way, is taking place in West Auckland. You know what I mean? So just for context, this is just like a bush out in West Auckland, near Titirangi, not too far from Glenhaven. So it's all very interesting in terms of like an Auckland
Yeah.
folklore legend. So yeah, we got West Auckland stories, we got all sorts of things. So he told Wairere that he would accept them being together, asked her to lead him to the village so that he could make peace with the father of this boy, the chieftain of the Patupaerehe village, and not carry on with wars. Uh, when she led him the uh, to the village, he killed Hui and dragged Wairere to the Hunua Falls. He threw her off the Hunua Falls, and it has since been known as Hunua Falls. Um, Now, the reason why I give you a little bit of backstory towards that is there's also a lot of deaths, recorded deaths at Hunua Falls as well, as you know. There's been a lot of people that have died there. There has been many rahui placed on that area because of drownings. Um, the Arahui is placed on an area where a significant event or something like death has occurred as a means of uh, dampening like negative effects from negative energy effects, basically. So Rector Po Arahari is placed down as a token of respect to the person that has passed away. Now, so far, I think I don't know the exact number, but it's between 12 or so people that have drowned there at Hunua Falls. The Hunua Falls plateau itself is quite interesting because you can jump off the falls there. Well, I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not telling people to jump off the falls. Please don't jump off the falls. Um, yeah, first and foremost, just a disclaimer, I don't want people jumping off any waterfalls. Um, but there is a sudden drop when you go to swim in the Hunua Falls where it just drops to 5 meters. The next drop from there is like 10 meters, but it has depths of up to 15 meters in the Hunua Falls. So it is a place that's quite dangerous, and you should swim safely when you're swimming there. But all the victims have been men, and These are all recorded deaths, by the way. I don't know the exact number. Look it up on Google. Google's your friend. Um, but the victims have all been males. In Māori culture, or especially the tribe of Te Kawerau Maki, they say that the men have all died there as a result of a vengeful spirit, the spirit of Wairere, who is still to this day trying to search for the love who was killed by her father. So yeah, another cool ghost story, but also ties in with the Pachupaere thing as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, a creature of legend. There's many like them, the Ture who are another form of fairy folk, um, possess flight, those sorts of things. There's also water creatures, mermaid-like creatures, different taniwha um, that would be called upon, act as guardians, be uh, protect like seashores or go to battle with warriors. I do know one for like Piha. There's the ones from where I'm from up north. We know the names of all these taniwhas, what sort of realm they guard, but they all fall under that same sort of pantheon, kind of children of the gods of the Māori pantheon. Each of them from a different domain or realm. But yeah, there's this. I mean, I'm sure you've at least heard of the story of like Hatu Patu.
Oh yeah, love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Love that
Hatu
story.
Patu and the bird
Visited
woman,
the Rock,
like
and
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Hopped inside the rock. This
yeah,
rock is real. You can actually go and visit the
yeah,
rock that Hatu
yeah.
Patu in it. So this is all, it's quite tied into multicultural. There's a rich library of all these traditional tribal legends and stories, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, when I've traveled around, especially like over in Scotland, for example, the
Yeah,
first thing that they ask me about is the taniwha, because they have
yeah.
their own Loch Ness monster, and or they have various lake monsters in their lakes as well.
Hmm.
And lake monsters are a huge part of their old folkloric history as well. So
Yeah.
they're very curious about our taniwhas because that's the iconic one that they sort of they hear about. Um, and of course, the taniwha is sometimes in the news, isn't it, with closures of motorways and
Yeah.
motorway construction and stuff like this. It sort of pops up, the name pops up, so that people reading that overseas are very curious. They go, "What is this? What?" You know,
Mm.
I guess they're
So
imagining giant, big, lumbering prehistoric creatures, running across the roads and blocking motorways and stuff.
I think Taniwha can take many types of forms. Usually, and it can be corporeal or non-corporeal as well, or more like a specific type of animal. Sharks, octopus, they're a type of Taniwha. There's also Taniwha that can be summoned for war and through ancient chants and prayers. Taniwha act as guardians as well in the Māori kingdom. Uh, a story from Waikato, which is quite famous, a saying from there, He piko he taniwha. It's a story about the Waikato River having a taniwha on every corner as, a means of protection for the Waikato people and their sacred lands. But yeah, the saying he piko he taniwha refers to there being a taniwha present at every bend of the Waikato River.
Yes.
Out in Piha, a famous taniwha story is the story of Kaifare. We'll just look it up quickly. I do have some notes here as well. Um, I like this sort of stuff because I'm also right into mythology, so this stuff is really cool.
Mm.
Uh, so the story of Tamure and Kaifare. So it's another West Auckland story. I might be a bit biased. I did grow up in West Auckland, Sunnyvale, and lived all around there. My mum still lives in Ranui now. But the story of Tamure and Kaifare. So Kaifare is a taniwha situated in the Piha region. And I have it's just a theory, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Kaiwhare is responsible for a lot of the deaths out in Piha. I mean, there's so much they even have a TV show for Piha rescue. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
people that die out there on a regular basis. I mean, it is also a terrible West Coast beach that is quite dangerous. So you should always practice safety when swimming out there. But the story of Tamure and Kaiwhare is the story of a Māori warrior called Tamure and the Taniwha Kaiwhare. Now, the Taniwha would eat up all of the food in the ocean for the tribe that lived in those lands. Because of this, they tried to figure a way of how they could subdue Kaiwhare. Tamure was the bravest warrior from their village and was gifted with a greenstone mere or patu. This greenstone mere was said to have the ability to kill or destroy any taniwha. So when you think about those sorts of things too, it's kind of like a god weapon, like this forged Māori weapon that is, it may only have a singular use, just for battling taniwha or fighting taniwha. So Tamure's wahaika, which is the name of the weapon, uh, was able to defeat any taniwha that he battled. He knew eventually he'd have to battle Kaiwhare, and the story's kind of sad too, but it's a story of a man fighting a taniwha every day, and it's over time from them fighting for so long. We're talking like years. They fought for decades, so many years that after a while, when going to battle with someone for so long like that, if you think of it in terms of a fighting song or fighting story or a warrior story, you really get to know a person over that length of time. You're fighting each other for a long time. You really get to know each other, and they became friends in the end. So when Tamure possessed the Patu that could kill him, and finally did defeat him, it was kind of bittersweet to have defeated this friend whom he was equals with in terms of a warrior sense. Uh, so he, instead of delivering the killing blow, he let Kaiwhare go. And the story is that Kaiwhare still roams the beaches of Piha, and that's the reason why so many people go missing there, or
Mhm.
or there's been so many deaths out Piha. But these are just a couple of the famous Taniwha stories. I mean, you could say the story of Paikea riding the whale is a Taniwha
Yeah,
story as well, I
yeah.
mean, that to me is a Taniwha. If you can ride a whale, I mean that's bonkers.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love it. Love it.
Mm.
Um, we have a question here from Sean. He was quite keen to know about the Maori concept of witchcraft. Does magic appear in pre-Christian Maori beliefs?
Yes. So, like I said earlier, like in terms of the triangle of like Māori beliefs is the physical realm. So that's all the things to do with the physical realm, your body, nature, anything physical, elements, tangible things, and then the spiritual world and the mental world. So all these sort of things are in line with each other. Sometimes those two can interact, but in terms of um, what could be considered a form of witchcraft, which in itself is like a Western concept, really. Witchcraft. If you grew up in sort of a different time and things were different, maybe your beliefs would be more aligned with nature. Also, you have less distractions. There's no technology. There's no screens to keep us occupied all day. So nature is what you're seeing every day. You're looking for patterns. Like humans are good for seeking out pattern recognition, solving puzzles, and telling stories. So you have the natural world around you, the environment, but also your body, the way your body works, um, in understanding of the universe, the galaxy, things like that. So those sorts of things, witchcraft, or I would consider as part of kind of the darker arts style. So these are, and at the end of the day, forms of art. So we do share these sorts of stories on the tour. Stories about the different art forms when the Europeans arrived here. Things like whakairo, so wood carving. So these are manifestations of what's kind of in that mind realm of the Māori world. You're visualizing a specific entity, what do you think it looks like? You're giving names to them, faces, stories associated with every line and curve of the body, and then um, practicing sort of darker arts, things like head preservation, head shrinking, cannibalism, moko mokai, toi moko. These are things that you could consider those forms of witchcraft. Curses and spells, makatu, but also about healing, karakia, and things of the opposite nature, miri miri, domi domi. So these are all two sides of the same sort of coin. You've got these realms of healing and understanding on that side, and then realms of, the unknown and more darker side of things. Um, the Māori tamokos could be considered a form of blood art, especially in the traditional sense, where they were performed with uhi or chisels to tear open the flesh. A lot more arduous process and a bit more hardcore, which is why the tamacles of the old days sort of had a different look to the tattoo gun style tamako. But specific types of tamako, puhoro, mataora, matakiore, even like to wear facial moko, that comes from the story of Mataora, who got that gift of blood arts from the underworld. It's in the Māori afterlife stories, we believe in Rarohinga. Tamoko is part of an art form um, that was taken from the underworld and brought to, the mortal realm. This when these things are starting to mix, the physical realm and the spiritual realm starting to mix. You got those manifestations of what their spiritual beliefs were, in terms of Māori ink designs, tamako style tattooing. There's many different types of them, but each stroke of those has a meaning in the tattoos. So every specific line or curve, the way it's shaded, each refers to a specific story or body of knowledge. So you're storing that knowledge on your skin as well. But yeah, these, I mean, depending on the way you view the world, these could be considered something very bizarre or different or unique. Puhoro tattoos, similar to other Pacific cultures, getting your thighs, thumb, and back tattooed um, has specific symbolism and meaning. Like one of the stories is that to receive puhoro is to understand what it's like for a woman to carry a child. So there's also, there's healing in that, and sort of becoming equal with your partner on that sort of field. Um, going through that sort of immense pain as a form of understanding. So yeah, not so much like witchcraft in a traditional sense where you are doing spells and things like that, but although they do exist.
Hmm. Fascinating, yeah. You touched on cannibalism just
Yeah,
there.
I got
That
that
leads me
one.
to my next question. It's a location that I've been fascinated by since I was a kid. That's Albert Park. Now we all know about the tunnels under
Yeah,
Albert Park.
yeah.
We all hear about the tunnels, but it was also a Maori settlement, wasn't it, at one point?
Yeah, Te Horo Tupā, which is you see like with some of the train stations and stuff that are getting developed there. You got the new train station in Waitemata, which is named after the name of that harbour or bay. Horotiu is one of the bus stops as well. Albert Park's former name was Te Horo Tupā. So Pā is not a traditional village in a sense of like living there, but it could be used for customs, training, warfare as a battle armament, and things like that. The position of it, I mean, if you stand at Albert Park in Auckland City, and you picture all of those taller buildings around that area gone, so you'd be able to see directly down to the ocean, from that spot there, and all along, possibly even to the Mission Bay area, because you'd get a clear sight line for those areas. You'd be able to look out to the Rangitoto, and Waiheke Islands. So in terms of military applications, it provided um, good territory to set up for battle training and things like that. Um, but there were also other rituals performed there in Albert Park, um, which, yeah, again, we tell these stories on our tours as well. Um, the stories of Maori cannibalism. So there was two types of Maori cannibalism back in the old days, which was like war cannibalism and ritualistic cannibalism. So war cannibalism would be you're out with a war party, you come across a Maori village. It can be a way to like hype up your warriors, and get them sort of like bloodlusted, uh, and sacrifice to a god, as a form of sacrifice for Tumatoinga. But ritualistic cannibalism was a different form. That's the sort that we talk about in Albert Park, which is rituals where a body would be especially prepared for specific warriors. So this might happen after a war has taken place, but you would have old women, these tohunga kai tangata. So they were elderly Māori women who had all of the karakia and knowledge on that particular preparation, you could say. So the bodies would be hung up in pūriri trees. These trees are noticeable for their like wavy sort of leaves. The legend with pūriri trees is that from hanging so many bodies in the pūriri trees, the pūriri tree took on a life of its own from absorbing so much blood and oils that the leaves wrinkled to reflect wrinkled skin, So it's supposed to be a representative of that. So pūriri trees. And they would hang the bodies up in the pūriri trees after removing the head. The head would usually be given to the chief. The chief was the one with a lot of information or specific tohunga who would prepare the head for toi moko or moko mokai. So that's the form of head shrinking or head preservation of the Māori people. It would be like I said when I was talking about the photographs. This is where the law for that comes from. To possess your enemy's head was, a great way of showing sort of your prowess as a warrior, but also as a sacred item for family members. So you wouldn't just maybe shrink your enemy's head. Certain family members would want to go out like that, have their body consumed, and have their head preserved, have their bones stored somewhere. So the process would start with the body being drained in the pūriri trees. After that process, the body would be dismembered and into smaller sections capable for being cooked in a hangi. The food would then be prepared specifically by these female tohunga, these female, elderly women. They were more noticeable for, and this is the spooky part, I guess, about it, for their long nails or their maikuku. They had long fingernails for scraping the meat off the bones of the body. So that's how you could recognize who what they did in the village or who that person was.
Wow. Yeah.
So they're recognized for their like long bloody red nails for scraping the meat off the bodies to be prepared to consume. Once the meal had been cooked, and I mean, you've probably had hangi, right, before, Mark?
Oh yeah.
Pretty good, right? They're pretty
Lovely.
good.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so like, if you are going to eat some human flesh, like hangi's not that bad of a way to do it, I think.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm getting hungry thinking about it.
the way you said that, Mark, yeah. Oh yeah. Nah, but seriously though, hangi's good. And so after the body would be hangi, the warriors that would be consuming the flesh would have their hands tied behind their back, kneel down on the ground, and the woman who prepared the bodies would then feed each of the warriors by hand. So they would undergo a process to become tapu, to consume that food. Now, usually food is a way to make you gnaw. So gnaw is kind of like kosher or neutral, like back to a neutral status, basically. It's not too deep in the spiritual realm like a wahi tapu where you have to cleanse yourself. It neutralizes things. I don't know, maybe the term breaking bread. Do you know the term for breaking bread? Like a traditional term for cleansing an area,
Yes.
making it, yeah. So um food would be a way to make someone who is sacred become Noa. However, when you're consuming human flesh, that act in itself is tapu. So you're not allowed to handle the food with your hands, um, lest you curse yourself or become tapu as a result of that. And then you have to go through a different type of process to become Noa after that. So once they had been fed, the next process would be for them to be like dunked in a river is usually the process. So a similar process to if you were to handle a dead body in an urupa. So some of these traditions or protocols will cross over, and they basically these rituals or traditions have lineages to like protocols you do with the dead or protocols you do, for fishing, protocols for planting in these seasons. So they're governed by these specific rules. Once the body had been consumed, the bones would usually be stored in caves, sitting up with their bone arms wrapped around the knees. If the head was removed, it would be preserved. I do share the story on the tour as well, but I figured it might make good content anyway if anyone would like to learn the traditional method for shrinking a head. So, once the head had been removed, they would. Um, it was a little bit different to um, like Egyptian or African style head shrinking, where the brains would be removed from the nostrils and things like that. They would still mash up the brains, but they wouldn't be removed. It would just, degrade over time, become preserved in the skull. But the head would be removed and placed into some flax baskets or harakeke baskets. Once those baskets have been loaded, they would lower them into ocean water for a night or two. It would bloat the head as a result, but it was to absorb all of that salt content from the ocean. Once it had spent a couple of nights in the salt water, they would bury it in dry sand and then repeat this process, dig the head out, bury it again in the dry sand. Once it came out dry from the dry sand, so it absorbs a lot of the moisture out of sand. I don't know if you've like dropped water onto a bit of sand before, but it's quite absorbent. So it would remove all the moisture from the head, but keep a lot of the salt content. So I'm also going to break it down in like in terms of scientific terms. So salt was the preservation agent for this. You can do this with other forms of meat in this as well, and preserve meats with salt. I don't know if anyone's heard of biltong on here before, but something like that. Same sort of effect. So it would keep a lot of the salt content inside of the head. After that, the head would be laid out on racks, usually by a top knot of the person's hair, hung over a fire to smoke. So it'd go through a curing process after that. So you're starting to cure it, basically, using smoking techniques, salt, same sort of process you would follow for meats, but it's done over an open fire. The fire would be used at first to dry out the rest of the contents from the head. It did have the risk of kind of blackening the skin a bit more than it may have been in real life. And then once it had been smoked for around 20 hours or so, they pull it out of the smoker and it should be like preserved, like quite dry.
Mm.
The soot and stuff would be removed from the face by washing, cleaning the smoked head. And then the final process for preservation would be to oil the head with shark oil. So they'd remove the oil from shark. And this process would have to be done year after year. So it was kind of a time for remembrance as well. You'd bring your ancestors' head down as a family and then oil this, keep it preserved. It was a form of, you know, guardianship over your ancestor. There are still some families as well that have the shrunken heads of their ancestors. As you know, a lot of them got sold during early colonization from 1769 to 1830. The largest trade out of New Zealand was shrunken heads. And but as you know, in order to, I mean, keep a business model like that alive, it means that you're killing each other and preserving each other's head for sale. So, a lot of this was what led to the musket wars, particularly with Ngāpuhi because they had guns. You could get one gun for a shrunken head. That's a lot of gun for a shrunken head. You know what I mean? Guns
Mm.
were quite expensive back in the day. You're taking a big plot of land for a couple of axes, so a gun will have quite high value, but also because this head was revered and high value to Maori culture as well, they looked at it as like a very prized possession to be giving it. Um, so to fuel that sort of musket war, it was largely fueled from the economy driven by preserved head sales. So a lot of these are still now today around the world. And Te Papa Museum is responsible for the return and preservation and care of those heads to this day. So a lot of those are still being returned to our country, the Moko Mokai heads, to be returned to their tribal lands. It's said that in multicultural, like you can't rest until you return to your tribal lands. You don't get to do your the leading away to a journey to the top of Cape Banga to dive off into Rarohenga. Just a little, I know I'm probably backtracking a little bit, but as part of that leading away to a story, like I told you at the Spirit Talk conference,
Mm.
is um that final journey when as a spirit you jump off Cape Reinga, that is called Tahike. So it's the same name as the marae I'm from. My marae is named that because one, because of the river, but also because it's on that sort of like pathway line of leading away to it. So spirits are said to have directly come through the pathway of my marae, Tahike. So yeah, in order for those tupuna or those ancestors to rest, you know, those shrunken heads and preserved items need to be returned. You count that as a form of, I guess, like haunting or unrestlessness.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I could listen to this for hours. I really could. We'll have to get you back on and discuss it
No
more.
worries.
Okay, on a whole different note then. Okay, on a whole different topic now. You do other things as well. You do other things. You do a bit of dance work.
Yes.
You
So
went overseas
I'm,
with it as well recently.
what's that?
You went
Overseas?
overseas recently with it?
Yep.
Traveled?
Yep. Funny that you mentioned that. Today was actually my final day at university for class. So I took my final class. So
Oh,
I've just spent the last 3 years at the University of Auckland doing my bachelor's degree in dance studies. So I've danced for a long time as well, since a child. I have about 18 years dance teaching experience, choreography, that sort of thing. And yes, recently I went to China as part of the Asia Tour for 2025, University of Auckland. I was selected as one of the students to go and perform and teach in China.
mm,
So quite a different context in terms of dance education. These dance classes were at some of the most wealthy Chinese schools that you can go to. So it was amazing. It was just crazy to see sort of what unlimited resources can do in terms of education. So very high level dance education for us being there to teach these kids. Um, but it was a great journey. I mean, like, just the age of the land there in China is quite remarkable. Can feel a lot of ghosts there, especially walking the Great Wall of China. That was great. But yeah, I've just finished my dance degree. Yeah, bit of a just a creative. Yeah.
That's great. Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
That's really cool. Oh,
Yeah, I
well,
think it's
okay.
an
I think we're going to be running out of time. Well, then let's just
no,
leave it at
that's
that for
cool.
now. I've
Yeah,
soaked in a
sweet
lot of
as.
information, information overload.
Yeah, I'll likely look a little bit different the next time you catch me. So I'll save that for a review for next time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
No worries.
I look forward to that. Okay. Oh, thanks a lot, Te Oka. That's really amazing. And
No worries,
thanks for
Mark.
joining me. It's always great to sit and chat about all this.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hang.
And we'll get together again soon and talk more. And yeah,
Yeah,
tomorrow
most
night we're going to
definitely.
be the team, me and the team are going to be going to the Lake House Art Centre for their Halloween event tomorrow. So if you're in the area in Takapuna or on the North Shore, come along to the Lake House Art Centre and join us. There'll be hundreds of sugared up, screaming kids in costume. So come and join us, and it'll be fun. It's always great fun
No
to
worries.
hang out at the lake house. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. Thanks a lot, Te Oka. That's really amazing,
See you later,
and
Mark. You have a
we'll
good
talk
night.
soon.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks everybody for listening in. Thanks a lot.